All right, here we go. This is stream number one. I'm Joseph Craven for 40 Minutes of Hell. And we are going to be looking at, we're going to be discussing the Isaiah Thomas and Kyrie Irving blockbuster trade that is going down. Along with that, we're going to plug up some NBA 2K17, enjoying the final days of NBA 2K17 as 18 is coming out in less than a month now, which is an exciting time. But this is our first attempt at a live stream on this channel, and I've got experience doing this before, but I'm doing a lot more experiments on this particular video. I'm messing around with trying something else out, different software and stuff like that. So it's more of an experiment than anything else, but it's also a chance to sit down and break down what exactly it is that we can expect to see out of this trade. And you know, it's an intriguing one to begin with, and I'm going to see if I can get this to pop up. I'm going to see if I can bring up a side-by-side comparison of the two. I'm going to have to. Oh yeah, I realize what I'm doing now. Statistically speaking, the two different players. Here we go. So we've got basketballreference.com right here, and I mean, obviously you can see some more of my my open tabs. But you're looking at the actual statistics of the two guys that we are comparing. Talking about Kyrie and Isaiah Thomas, what they bring to the table. Obviously, Kyrie Irving, the number one pick in the 2012 draft, and Isaiah Thomas, the last pick in the draft, which I think is a storyline that has been brought about and been talked about quite a bit. If you look up here at the per game over their careers so far, okay, you see that Kyrie has a slightly better point output of 21.6 versus Isaiah's 19.1. That's way over here. You see that Isaiah actually gets to the line a little bit more often than Kyrie does. One more free throw attempt per game. You see that Isaiah, right here, I think this is very interesting, doesn't shoot as often per game. Seems to have, from the 2-point range, seems to have a slightly better percentage. That's marginal. I mean, you're talking about, that 0.05, 0.005. I mean, there's just nothing there. So, what are we talking about when we talk about these two players? Well, what you see is you see the difference in value. You see the difference in, perspective when it comes to this number one pick versus the final pick in the draft, right? I mean, Kyrie's sitting here with more minutes per game, 4 more minutes per game. I'm trying to find the most notable differences, and the most notable differences we find are really in field goal attempts and minutes per game. That's about it. Other than, if you see just that fourth column there, games played, that third column there, Isaiah Thomas has played more games than Kyrie Irving does, or has. He hasn't started as many, but Kyrie, instant starter, has a little bit more of an injury history with him, which is something to take in consideration when comparing these two players. Statistically speaking, you're getting two players in this trade that put up almost the same sort of numbers, okay? What do you get, though, when you're talking about durability? When you're talking about clutch moments, Kyrie, of course, had a huge moment in the playoffs against Golden State, just not long ago, in which he hit the big three in Game 7 that kind of sealed the victory for Cleveland and season before last. Kyrie has those moments. Isaiah so far has not had as much playoff experience as Kyrie Irving has. But Isaiah produces at basically the same clip, basically the same amount that Kyrie does. So Cleveland in this is actually, benefiting a little bit from the fact that they had a disgruntled player, and now they're getting a player that they know will play with a chip on his shoulder because he was traded out of the blue. He was the guy in Boston. And even after Boston went after Gordon Hayward, he was the guy. And he got traded. And I think there's something significant in that mentality. So, statistically speaking, if we were to jump back on that, you can go through that list, you can look in more detail, but the per 36 minutes, in kind of the advanced statistics and everything, per 36 minutes, almost no difference whatsoever. Kyrie Irving averages 22.8. Isaiah Thomas's average a clean 23 points per game. Field goal percentage is marginal. Isaiah shoots maybe 10%. I'm sorry, not 10%. He shoots maybe 2% worse. 55% for Kyrie, and then 45-7 versus 44-3. So you see there's less than 2% difference there. I mean, you can't really compare the two, or you can't really find too many differences between the two. You kind of have to compare the two of them as being almost the same player in a lot of ways. And that's kind of the thing about this trade that I think a lot of people are pointing out, that Cleveland has gotten a pretty good deal out of it, all things considered. They had a guy that wanted to leave, and a guy that, and they get a guy that produces almost the same amount, a little bit older, so you're not going to get as much of a future out of him per se, and you don't know what this hip problem is going to be like, but they're getting something out of it. Let's take a look here. Let's just go ahead and do some simulations here, because this is the fun part. All right. Not to mention Cleveland also gets, a potential maybe lottery pick in the next draft with all right, so we have the roster here. They maybe get in one of what people are saying might be one of the deepest drafts in a while. So, all right. So we want to, I think I already downloaded. Yeah. Okay, so I've already downloaded, I named it 2017, so I would remember, an updated roster here that the PlayStation user Embrace the Pace made. He kept it really up to date considering Isaiah was already on it. Embrace the Pace as well is a guy that has made a lot of really, really good draft classes. If you're playing on the PlayStation, if you're playing NBA 2K on the PlayStation, you're probably familiar with that name, Embrace the Pace, and some of the draft classes that he's creating. I download them in just about every GM mode that I use or that I've played. So you see Isaiah's already here as a 90 overall player. Not to mention, this still has Derrick Rose as an 81. I don't know at this point what I would rate Derrick Rose. I think this is a decent rating. Derrick Rose had a pretty good season last year, and people want to kind of forget that. But, you have versatile Jay Crowder over here, kind of known as one of the quintessential 3-and-D guys on the wings in the NBA right now. And then Tristan Thompson, who I think is maybe the best offensive rebounder in the NBA. So you got this starting lineup now that includes LeBron, Isaiah, Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, and probably J.R. Smith in the starting lineup, with, a decent shooting option in Korver off the bench, and a good 3-and-D guy here in case they want to do more with LeBron at like the point and Jay Crowder out on the wing playing lockdown defense. You got some options here. And Isaiah Thomas lacks some of the three-point shooting Kyrie Irving has. Otherwise, solid player. So let's look at what the Celtics have then. They now have Kyrie Irving, same rating on the game, which is good. But you notice his shooting and his three-point shooting is a higher rating. It's an A when Isaiah's was a B+. So whatever that is. You got Gordon Hayward at the 3, but you got to think if they want to play Jason Tatum a lot, then the Celtics will be probably playing Gordon Hayward at more of a shooting guard position and Tatum as the true 3 wing spot. Still a solid lineup. I love the way that Boston was able to secure Al Horford this past offseason. He was one of the bigger free agent pickups and, one of the most solid post players in the NBA. Great pickup here to get Al Horford. Boston, of course, wanted to make some sort of trade this offseason. They really looked at Paul George a lot, which I think is very interesting. They really wanted to make a big move, and it appears that big move was to get Kyrie Irving. Okay, some of the other notable changes, obviously the Jazz now have Ricky Rubio. We're looking at Zach Randolph with the Kings, who we might, is there a way to release a free agency? You might need to do that. I'm just kidding. Get yourself together, Zebo. All right. Carmelo's still with the Knicks, and we'll get to something a little bit later on, but one of the things that I would like to see simulated is whether or not the Cavaliers would be better off with Carmelo Anthony playing power forward for them. Just think about it. Lopez now with the Lakers, and this is where Embrace the Pace does a good job in creating these player models that really look like the rookies. Lonzo Ball, that's a pretty solid amateur rendition of Lonzo Ball. Lakers, this could be an interesting team to watch if we were simulating multiple seasons in a row. We're just going to be doing the one season tonight to see what happens here. And, of course, if we get all the way to, the Nets with D'Angelo now. Poor D'Angelo, kind of a forgotten man. Think he'll be all right. The Pacers without Paul George. And the Rockets with Chris Paul. This is another team we'll be keeping a close eye on. And Westbrook and Paul George together with the Thunder. Okay, so there we go. All right, I don't need to make any changes there. What we're going to be doing is getting into the league mode. All right, we're going to create a new league mode. Boom. All right, my league. We're going to use the custom roster. Go ahead and load that. This is the 2017 roster created by Embrace the Pace. Current NBA teams. Start in the regular season. Setup mode. We're going to do this, and I'll show you why in a little bit. Normalize, no fantasy draft. Everything the same. What I want to make sure to do is turn off the CPU trades so that the rosters themselves are untouched, and turn off injuries to make sure that we play an entire season with this created 2017 simulated roster. So that's what I'm really looking to do. Injuries and CPU trades turned off. Other than that, yes, that should be it. I'm not going to play any games, but I'm going to crank this up to Hall of Fame just for fun. Simulator difficulty. I don't know what this means. I've never seen simulator difficulty before. Oh well. Boom. Alright, so we're going to keep tabs on the teams in question. The Cavaliers, the Celtics in particular. Along with that, the... not the Pacers, but the Rockets and the Thunder. These were the big offseason moves right here. Paul George, Chris Paul, Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas. These would be the ones that we keep track of. And auto all of this. Make sure we auto prospect scouting so we're not getting updates in the middle of things. Here we are. So we're just looking at how these teams will function now that they have new players on the roster. Not just new players, but also the rookies in the case of Boston with Jason Tatum being there. So we're going to go up to the All-Star break and simulate through the All-Star break and see how things go. Boston off to a rocky start. One thing I am curious about is what they're going to be doing. I meant to do this a second ago. But let's just say that we have Gordon Hayward. We'll still list him as a small forward, but we'll put him as alternate as a shooting guard and see if the game puts him at shooting guard or not. I think this is really important. Yeah, there we go. So now we're starting both Hayward and Jason Tatum. The expected starting lineup for the Boston Celtics: Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Al Horford. Yeah, there we go. Are there any other teams? Yeah, Chris Paul, James Harden, Trevor Ariza, Clint Capella. Interesting to see what that guy can continue to do as he improves. Westbrook and Paul George. And Cleveland has Isaiah, Kyle Korver, LeBron James. This is the game's decision. This is kind of more just one of those things. I don't know what to do with it. We're just going to let the game start Kyle Korver. Michael here. Kyrie calling out Kyrie's ISO ball. I like that. All right, we're going to simulate to the All-Star break, see what happens. All right, so along with this, we're going to break down this this trade a little bit more. It's going to make, if the Celtics really want to use Jason Tatum and Gordon Hayward together, it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens to the team if they start the both of them with Gordon Hayward at shooting guard, Jason Tatum at small forward, which is kind of what people are expecting, which is what we're doing here in the simulation. We've got, obviously, Cleveland, Boston. We're keeping tabs on how the Rockets are going to look in this simulation, and keeping tabs on the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, any other simulations that we want to do tonight in this little stream, we can do this after we get done with this first one. As we see right now, since we're focusing on the Cleveland side of the menu, we see Cleveland is putting together a good enough record to be bouncing back and forth between second and third place in the Eastern Conference. We'll check when we get to the All-Star break in just about a week here whether Boston is in the first place of the Eastern Conference. That's kind of what it's kind of what I'm thinking is happening here. I can't see the game putting anyone else in number one spot. So, nope, they put the Bucks there. So, thank you, video games. The Milwaukee Bucks are the number one seed here in the Eastern Conference. All right, Cleveland sitting here in second place. Boston actually all the way down here in sixth, which is an interesting part for the simulation. A 29-28 record. So the simulation is saying that Boston is struggling with Kyrie Irving leading the show as opposed to Isaiah Thomas. Not really sure what this 2K game sees in it, but then again, this is just a video game. Western Conference, though, Oklahoma City is overtaking the Golden State Warriors. Apparently the addition of Paul George is exactly what the teams needed. Houston hanging in there in the number 3 spot. Let's look at the stats to see what our virtual players are putting together, what type of season. LeBron is still leading the Cavaliers. He is actually averaging a triple-double here, as we see, which is very interesting. 24-3, 10-3, 10-3, rebounds and assists. Kevin Love putting together some good rebounding. Isaiah Thomas fitting in well in that scoring, 23-5, averaging 7.1 assists. It makes it seem like the game's putting LeBron as the main playmaker for Cleveland in this simulation. But Isaiah Thomas fitting in well, already second leading scorer on the team. Low turnover numbers, which is really good. Not that many steals. Isaiah Thomas is going to be a defensive liability. We know that. Not saying that Kyrie Irving was much of a defender for Cleveland, but Isaiah definitely a defensive liability on that end. So now for the Celtics, Kyrie is leading the team. Michael here in the chat is believing that Boston isn't beating LeBron in Cleveland. You know, I'm not seeing much disagreement. If I had to predict right now, Cleveland is still the team to beat in the East, especially now that they've got a guy who has experience leading a team in Isaiah Thomas. Kyrie Irving, heck of a player, but Isaiah Thomas now is a guy that has led Boston to the playoffs and to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, to the number 1 seed last season. Isaiah Thomas has leadership experience. The only question is whether or not he and LeBron can fit together well, play style-wise. Here in our simulation, Kyrie, Gordon, the newcomers, are leading the Boston Celtics in scoring. That's not surprising. Jason Tatum posting up a decent regular season here. But what's really interesting is that the game doesn't see many assists going on. Al Horford is This is really funny to me, but Al Horford is leading the Celtics in assists in our video game simulation. So that's bold on the part of NBA 2K to think that Al Horford will be leading the game, the Boston Celtics. Kyrie, of course, is more of a scoring point guard, so this does make a little bit of sense that the game will put him towards a scoring role and not a playmaking role. But this is not good for Boston if this is indicative of what may happen in real life, of Boston not moving the ball around much. Brad Stevens, heck of a coach. Gotta expect he'll have a little bit more to say in that regard. And we'll discipline the team a bit more. Okay, offensive powerhouse here, the Houston Rockets in this simulation. James Harden and Chris Paul both averaging over 20 points a game and 10 assists a game. They even have James Harden as a 7.6 rebounds, Chris Paul at 6.7 rebounds. So even they're just rebounding out of their minds at the guard position. Kyrie has tape on his fingers for a reason. I like you, Michael. I like you. Interesting. I don't know. This is very interesting in the simulation to me. This is the most interesting thing so far, is that Houston's offense is working as well as it is. As we kind of expect here, as people expect in real life, it seems like James Harden and Chris Paul, who need the ball in their hands in order to succeed, it looks like they're going to carry the load offensively here. Eric Gordon coming off the bench. And beyond that, I mean, not a whole lot of point numbers as we go down 11, 10. So Oklahoma City, though, has... all right, the game is thinking that Russell Westbrook continues his dominant performances with another triple-double average, 12.2 rebounds, 11.6 assists, and 33 points a game. Paul George sliding in there with 21-9. This is the move that I think a lot of people are agreeing is maybe the one that makes the most sense from a standpoint of a team fitting together in the offseason. Paul George is very comfortable off the ball and is a good teammate off the ball. He's a great weapon. He's a really strong offensive scorer. He's very, very strong, physical, athletic freak, all that sort of good stuff. But what is really, really significant about it is that he seems to fit well with a dynamic scorer in Russell Westbrook. So it would be interesting to see how well the Thunder actually do with the two of them leading the league or leading the team offensively. In our simulation, it looks like Oklahoma City is barely hanging on to that number 1 spot in the conference. All right, they've dropped down to 2 at this point, and can they hold on? Okay. So, in the simulation, once again, Russell Westbrook wins an MVP. Oklahoma City actually seals up the number one seed in the Western Conference. Markelle Fultz, the number 1 pick here for Philly, drops the Rookie of the Year award. Jeremy Lin has a resurgence in Brooklyn. And Billy Donovan is Coach of the Year. So we're looking at Westbrook, Harden, James. Ooh, look at you, Giannis. Good for you. And Boogie Cousins as our All-NBA first team. Three of the players that we're monitoring, LeBron, Harden, and Westbrook. Apparently the Warriors just did not have a good virtual season here. The best that Curry and Durant can do is second team All-NBA. Paul George sneaks in for a third team All-NBA. That's one of the other teams that we were keeping up with. All defensive, Markelle Fultz actually as a rookie fits in there. And we want to see if Jason Tatum's an all-rookie second team. So they don't think that Jason Tatum had as good a virtual year as everyone else. So OKC, who we were keeping up with, locked down the virtual first seed, which is still weird to me. Houston there is the number 3. And over in the East, we still ended up with Milwaukee as the number 1 and Cleveland with the 2. Apparently Boston didn't make the playoffs in this simulation. Keep in mind, I've turned off injuries, I've turned off trades. There's no reason that anything would have happened to the team to make them fall apart. But according to this, Boston ends up with a losing record of 39-43 without Isaiah Thomas. If there's any truth to this, and we can't read too deeply into it because it is a video game, but if there's any truth to this, then this means that Boston is the clear loser in this trade by picking up Kyrie Irving. Yeah, so Boston doesn't even make the playoff in this simulation. A quick look at statistics, and I do mean quick so we can see how the playoffs go. Westbrook averages another triple-double. Paul George, not a lot of change here. For Cleveland, Isaiah Thomas ends up ending the season out as their leading scorer, but LeBron James averages a triple-double. Finally, everyone expected LeBron to be the first one to average a triple-double since Oscar Robertson. Apparently in this simulation, he does. Next season, he will. But 23 points, 10.2, 10.2. Kevin Love, good rebounding season for him. Boston, what went wrong with you? Well, it might be the fact that, your point guard barely beat out your center in assists per game and still had 2.5 turnovers a game. Points-wise, Kyrie Irving leads the way. Gordon Hayward there. Maybe it is the fact that Gordon Hayward had been playing at the 2 guard for the entire season, and 2K didn't enjoy him playing there. James Harden and Chris Paul still doing very well. Chris Paul ends up taking that assist title away from James Harden, though. League leaders-wise, it's not hard to expect that Russell Westbrook with 33.3 a game would be the points leader here. Assist-wise, he also led there, so there you go. All right, if we're looking at this simulation, let's go ahead and simulate the current round and see who gets eliminated first from any of our teams that we're monitoring. Oh, the number 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder get eliminated. Huh. All right. So we've still got the Rockets. We still got the Cavaliers in the East. Looks like the Rockets and the Cavs both advance to their conference finals. In the conference finals, Cleveland gets eliminated, and Houston actually ends up going to the finals and winning. So the Houston Rockets are simulated champions. Well, that very, very intriguing. All right, fair enough. This is what 2K thinks will happen next season. With these roster changes. James Harden is a finals MVP as the Rockets win it all. Cleveland upset by the 76ers. So a lot of hope, according to this simulation. We're going to back out. We're going to do the simulation one more time because you can't do a simulation just once and not, want to see more of see if the results can be duplicated. So we're going to jump back out. We're going to set up the whole thing one more time, and we're going to make one minor change. We're going to say that a couple of other roster changes happen. because there still was talk of Cleveland trying to make a move for someone else. In particular, there was a lot of talk about Cleveland trying to make a move to convince Carmelo Anthony to leave New York, trying to make a trade for Carmelo Anthony. So we're just going to say, what if that trade does go through, but who in the world could Cleveland give up to make this happen? Contract-wise, they probably want to drop somebody that has a lot of money on the contract, someone like Tristan Thompson. LeBron doesn't want to get rid of Tristan Thompson. They have the same agent. They are close friends. He wants to defend Tristan Thompson. They would probably be wanting to move someone like Kevin Love around. For the sake of this, though, for the sake of this simulation, we're going to break all the rules, and we're just going to say that they just got rid of JR. That was it. They didn't. We're gonna bend the rules. We're gonna say that it's a pretty unbelievable trade here. That they're not worrying so much about whether or not they're saving money or whatever it may be. That the contracts line up like they're supposed to in the NBA. We're just gonna go ahead and say Cleveland decides to pick up Carmelo for J.R. Smith. Whatever. It's a video game. If the Rockets can win the league, why can't we just go ahead and move Carmelo for basically nobody? All right. We're going to do the same sort of setup here. We're going to use our custom roster. Once again, this roster was made by PlayStation PSN user Embrace the Pace, who I really enjoy the rosters he creates. He puts a lot of thought into them. We use the current team starting the regular season. Yeah, everything the same. Everything the same, except we're going to turn off CPU trades and turn off injuries. So everyone has the same roster throughout the entire season. Monitoring Cavs, Celtics, Rockets, and Thunder. Cool. All right. As this loads up, this is something I want to do a whole lot more on this channel, as I want to do a lot of 2K simulations, and so I want to do just the most ridiculous things possible, really. So if anyone watching this, whether live or later on after the broadcast is over, if anyone wants to jump in and have any suggestions for what they want to see going on here, then I am all ears. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, this is what Cleveland decides to do with Carmelo now on their team. Let's say Carmelo as a small forward / power forward. Okay, that's already set. So if Carmelo's already set as the small forward / power forward, I've always liked Carmelo's post game. I thought that he had a very, very refined. He's got refined moves. I think he's just a really good basketball player. As far as actually having, there we go, moves that he can do, creating down low especially. LeBron has been slower to develop a post game or develop more playmaking down low. Carmelo really adapted to that pretty well. So I'm going to say they start Carmelo at the power forward position and play him kind of in the similar role to what Draymond Green does, except without any defensive ability. Kevin Love slides down to the 5. So LeBron, Carmelo, Kevin Love is your front court with Kyle Korver, why not? And Isaiah Thomas as the guards. All right, for Boston, I want to make sure that Gordon Hayward and Jason Tatum are starting with Marcus Morris and Marcus Smart, the two Marcuses coming off the bench there. For the Rockets, there's nothing to adjust. Chris Paul, James Harden are already the starters. For the Thunder, same with Westbrook and Paul George playing ungodly 39 minutes a game. Same thing, we're going to zoom through the to get to the playoff, the All-Star break. I'm very curious to see what the rookies do this season as well, but most curious to see whether or not the virtual Thunder can keep up their form. Thought I already said that. Thank you, Scout. If the virtual Thunder can lock down the number 1 seed again, which it seems like they're doing, considering they've only dropped 2 games so far into November, I'm very curious to see what the real-life Thunder can do next year. But, of course, video games are ridiculous. But what I'm most interested to see is whether or not Cleveland pulling in Carmelo Anthony can improve them and keep them from being knocked out by the 76ers in the in the finals, Eastern Conference Finals. The Bucks, who I was wearing a hat of the Bucks. I think it's very interesting the game gave the Bucks the number 1 seed in the East. So again, we're going to check on the stats really quickly and the standings. A little bit faster this time so we can get on to the end of the season. Personally, I think the Celtics will turn out a lot better than this game is trying to give them credit for. I just think that Hayward... I think Tatum has a good game that should translate pretty well to the NBA, and I expect to see him, fit in well in a team when he doesn't have to be the guy, where Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward will be taking those, the top 2 spots, and Al Horford, even to an extent, is the number 3 guy there. All right, so in this simulation, Golden State is still on top. Oklahoma City has dropped a little bit, and Houston has taken the number 2 spot. So the 2 teams that we're monitoring in the West, the Rockets and the Thunder, things going well for them there, considering the Thunder did not even make the playoffs last season. In the East, though, Cleveland has retaken the top spot, and Charlotte is in number 2 with Milwaukee behind there. So high hopes there in Charlotte. However, the Boston Celtics are continuing to struggle in the simulation. 2K does not believe that Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, and Kyrie Irving can lead Boston to glory. If we look at the statistics here for the teams, similar to the last simulation, Westbrook with monstrous points per game and a triple-double in general, with Paul George right behind him. Isaiah Thomas is leading the scoring load in Cleveland this time around, and they are saying that LeBron is behind him. LeBron not averaging a triple-double like he did in our first simulation of the night. Not really sure what the issue is there with LeBron. I guess the addition of Carmelo Anthony to the lineup means that LeBron is not playing with the ball in his hands as the primary playmaker as much. In the previous simulation, with just Isaiah Thomas added, LeBron James was the primary playmaker and was pulling in, 10 assists a game, along with 10 rebounds and 20-something points. This time around, there's a little bit more of an even scoring load once you get past Isaiah Thomas as the principal scorer. Kevin Love with 15-4 and a 9.8 rebounds. Carmelo with 14-5. And then Derrick Rose coming off the bench with a decent 13-3 and 4.8 assists per game. But once again, our Boston Celtics are just not doing well. And this time around, I didn't even change Gordon Hayward's position to small forward, from small forward to shooting guard. I just put him at shooting guard. And maybe that's affecting him. Maybe playing him at the 2 guard instead of the 3 spot is affecting the game too much. But Gordon Hayward not scoring as well this time around. And once again, we're seeing bad assist numbers come out of the Boston Celtics. So there's our statistical breakdown at this point, the All-Star break. We'll get to the end of the year now. There's a good point that, Michael, you bring up now again, that the Cleveland should try to trade the Nets pick for Melo. I think one of the main things that they would want to do is try to hold on to that pick if they can. Just because of the fact that a lot of experts are thinking the 2018 draft is going to be one of the most stacked drafts around. And if the Nets continue to struggle as a team, then Cleveland could be looking at a potential lottery pick. Now, that's a big gamble when you can take a pick and that is in demand right now and know that you can pick up a player like Carmelo Anthony, or maybe even make a move for somebody else who can fill in that gap at the 2 spot, as opposed to getting another wing or post scorer in Carmelo. But it would be very interesting if they did pick up Carmelo, because then you could see LeBron James playing that point forward role, Carmelo as a true scorer, not having to be the guy, but being a secondary option there, which I think he'd be comfortable with, and Isaiah Thomas. It could be a really good lineup, but I think Cleveland would rather hold on to that pick to see what happens to it next season, and if they could land someone like a Michael Porter Jr., for example, Mohamed Bamba down low, if they could get someone like that, or if they could turn it around for someone other than Carmelo, it maybe fit the 2 spot. But with Dane Gilbert being the type of guy that he is, it would not surprise me at all if they just traded the pick for basically nothing, because Dane Gilbert's kind of an idiot. Here we are at the end of this season. Westbrook again with an MVP, Markelle Fultz again with Rookie of the Year. The exact same, but this time Steve Kerr wins Coach of the Year, because the Warriors, I believe, locked up the number 1 spot in the West this time around. We do see 3 players that we've been monitoring make the All-NBA first team. This time around, though, it's Westbrook, Chris Paul, and LeBron James. But we still got Giannis. The game thinks Giannis will be All-NBA next season, and Boogie Cousins. Along with that, let's see, All-NBA second team, Paul George makes it there, another player we're monitoring. Third team is where we finally see Curry and Durant. The game, again, not really liking the Warriors for some reason in this lineup. Paul lands an all-defensive first-team spot. LeBron and Westbrook get the second team. Once again, on our all-rookie squad, we have no Tatum from Boston this time around. However, we do have Boston sneaking into the playoffs with the 8th seed in this simulation. So Cleveland locks down the 1. Boston ends up with the 8th seed in the East. And in the West, it looks like Houston with the 2, OKC with the number 3 seed, Warriors back on top. This, to me, feels a little bit more like a realistic expectation of what we can see next year. I do think that Houston can, if Chris Paul and James Harden can gel, easy to expect them being 2 or 3 seed. If they can't, then they fall apart. OKC, I do see making the playoffs. I don't necessarily see them being a number 3 seed, and I certainly don't see them being number 1 like they were in our previous simulation. But I'm very shocked to see that the game thinks so poorly of the Boston lineup. We're going to simulate the first round. Cleveland has been eliminated by Boston. So that's their plan all along. Sneak in with the 8th seed and upset the Cleveland Cavaliers. So now we see that the addition of Carmelo Anthony helps during the regular season, but falls apart in the playoffs. Down in the West, the Rockets and Thunder are playing each other, so one of our teams will be eliminated. It's the Thunder this time around. And so we've got a lineup where the Houston Rockets are now playing the Warriors, a matchup here. Boston's eliminated by Toronto over in the East. We've reached the Eastern Conference Finals, where they expect the Charlotte Hornets for some reason to be this good. And Toronto, Warriors, Rockets in the West. The Rockets are eliminated in the finals, and we have the Raptors and the Warriors. So the question is, can the Raptors hold up? And the answer is no. Golden State wins another championship in this simulation with Stephen Curry playing 42 minutes a game, averaging 32 points a game, and bringing home the Finals MVP award. So there you go. Once again, we see our teams in the East falling apart. We do see Boston making it at least into the playoffs. So this is this simulation. We'll do more with some different moves in the future. And we will certainly do more with some more ridiculous moves in the future. But as for now, this is going to wrap up our first live streaming simulation here on 40 Minutes of Hell. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. That's the thing that you're supposed to say if you're on YouTube. But for real, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out a whole lot more as the season gets closer, especially doing a whole lot of stupid simulations. If you have any simulation suggestions, if you want to see us take something really ridiculous and live stream it here on the channel, comment on this video below. Thank you for watching. I'm Joseph Craven, and this has been